It all started on what should have been just another peaceful flight. Passengers were settling in, babies softly cooing, and the usual pre-flight hum filled the cabin. Among them was a young black mother traveling with her infant, seated quietly, near the back, doing her best to keep her baby calm. Everything seemed routine until a moment that would leave everyone on board stunned. A flight attendant, rushing down the aisle with a tray of drinks, accidentally spilled a full cup of steaming hot coffee right onto the baby's lap. The mother's scream pierced the cabin. Passengers turned. Some gasped, others froze. The flight attendant stood shocked, mumbling apologies. But the damage was done. The baby wailed in pain, and the mother's panic quickly turned into desperation. People expected quick action, first aid, support, even compassion. But what happened next left everyone speechless. Instead of help, there was blame. Murmurs began to spread. The tension was thick, and just when it seemed like no one would step in, a man in plain clothes quietly rose from his seat. He flashed a badge. He was a federal agent, and what he said next changed the entire mood on that plane. But before anyone could fully grasp what was happening, the situation took another sharp turn. What did the agent say? And why did it make the flight crew so nervous? Stay tuned, because what happened next didn't just make headlines. It sparked a conversation across the country that still hasn't faded. The cabin went completely silent as the federal agent stepped into the aisle. He was calm, but firm, his eyes scanning the faces of the flight crew. Passengers leaned in, trying to hear what was going on. The mother, still clutching her crying baby, looked up with tears in her eyes, clearly unsure whether this man was going to help or make things worse. The agent didn't raise his voice. Instead, he pulled out a small notebook and asked a simple but powerful question. Who's in charge here? One of the flight attendants hesitated, then pointed toward the front of the plane where the head attendant stood frozen. That's when the agent slowly walked forward, identifying himself to the crew. This is now a matter of federal concern, he said. People started whispering. Phones came out, and the atmosphere on the flight shifted from shock to unease. As the agent continued speaking with the crew, the mother was given a wet towel and finally offered ice, but it felt too little, too late. Her baby's cries weren't just from pain, they were from the shock of the scalding heat and the stress of the loud, chaotic environment. Some passengers began questioning why the airline hadn't responded more urgently. Others speculated about whether this had happened before. What exactly did the agent know? Why did he take such immediate interest in this case? And why did a few crew members suddenly look so uncomfortable? The answers were still up in the air. The agent quietly stepped aside to make a phone call, his voice low but intense. Nearby passengers heard phrases like potential negligence, internal report, and secure statements. The flight crew, once bustling with routine service, now moved awkwardly, clearly shaken. The lead attendant tried to regain control, offering snacks and smiles, but no one was buying it. The atmosphere on board had shifted, and everyone could feel it. Meanwhile, a young woman across the aisle began filming discreetly. She whispered to the person next to her that she was a nurse and had noticed something odd. That coffee tray was wobbly the entire time, she said. I think it was set up wrong from the start. Her words added a new layer of concern. Was this just a clumsy accident, or something more careless behind the scenes? Another passenger, a retired airline employee, chimed in quietly, noting that the crew hadn't followed proper emergency protocol after the spill. There's supposed to be a medical response kit brought immediately, he said, shaking his head back in her seat. The mother was doing her best to soothe her baby, tears still running down her face. She looked both devastated and angry that no one had taken her seriously until the agent stood up. The whispers around her weren't just sympathy anymore, they were questions. Why had it taken so long for someone to help? Why was the crew avoiding eye contact? And most of all, what else might they be trying to hide? As the plane cruised thousands of feet above the ground, the tension inside the cabin felt heavier than the air itself. The federal agent returned to his seat, eyes sharp, jaw clenched. He had spoken to someone higher up, passengers nearby heard him mention filing a formal report upon landing. But he didn't sit back to relax. He kept watching every move, every exchange, especially between the flight attendants, who now huddled quietly near the galley, casting nervous glances down the aisle. The young nurse had quietly made her way to the mother, offering to check the baby's skin. It looks like mild burns, she whispered, gently inspecting the red blotches on the infant's legs. He needs proper care when we land. The mother nodded, her face still tight with worry, holding her baby closer. They didn't even bring ice right away, she said, like it was nothing. Behind them, murmurs were turning into open frustration. A man in a business suit spoke up, saying he had seen the spill happen, but that the flight attendant had been rushing carelessly through the aisle, barely looking ahead. She was distracted, he added, almost knocked into my arm, too. Other passengers started chiming in, and what started as a single moment was becoming something larger, a group of people who had seen too much to stay quiet. Then, just as things were growing louder, the captain's voice came over the intercom. His tone was different, strained, unsure. He asked for calm and cooperation, but his next words left everyone stunned. We've been asked to make an unscheduled landing. Those words from the captain hung in the air like a thunderclap. Passengers looked around, confused. A few gasped. The mother sat up straighter, clutching her child tightly. The federal agent immediately stood and walked toward the front, ignoring the flight attendant who tried to block his path. "Is this about the incident?" someone asked out loud. But no one answered. The captain didn't come back on the intercom. The tension spiked. Phones were recording now, passengers whispering guesses. Some thought the baby's injury had triggered a medical emergency protocol. Others suspected the agent had uncovered something deeper. But then, something unexpected happened. A second flight attendant, one who had been mostly silent until now, walked slowly toward the mother. Her voice trembled. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly, crouching next to the seat. "That wasn't supposed to happen. The tray. Someone switched the setup last minute. We didn't know until after." Her eyes darted to the galley. "And they told me not to say anything." The agent, overhearing, turned sharply. "Who's they?" he asked. Before she could answer, the lead flight attendant shouted from the front, trying to redirect attention. But it was too late. Whispers turned into a wave of unrest. Someone yelled out, "Are we in danger?" Another asked, "Why are we really landing?" The flight now felt less like an accident and more like a cover-up unraveling mid-air. And with the wheels soon touching down, everyone braced for what was waiting on the ground. As the plane descended, the cabin lights flickered briefly, and the silence was louder than any turbulence. The federal agent moved quickly, flashing his badge to the crew and ordering them to stay seated. No one argued now. The younger flight attendant, who had confessed, looked pale, her hands shaking in her lap. The mother held her baby close, whispering gently to him, eyes locked on the window. As the runway came into view, the wheels hit the ground hard. Within moments, the plane taxied to a far edge of the airport, nowhere near the regular terminal gates. Out the window, passengers saw flashing lights, police vehicles, an unmarked black SUV. Something serious was waiting. Once the door opened, uniformed officers stepped in. The lead flight attendant tried to speak, but the federal agent raised a hand. "You'll have your turn," he said calmly. He handed over a report, then nodded toward the back. "She needs medical attention now," he added, pointing to the mother and her baby. Paramedics entered, lifting the child gently as the mother followed. Then came the moment no one expected. As officers escorted the agent and the crew off the plane, the younger attendant whispered something to one of the officers, and suddenly, everything changed. Instead of detaining the agent, they turned to the lead flight attendant and placed her in handcuffs. The crowd gasped. The twist. She wasn't just crew, she was under internal investigation already for multiple misconduct complaints, and this flight had just exposed her last. As the lead flight attendant was taken away in handcuffs, the entire plane watched in stunned silence. No one had expected things to unfold like this. The federal agent stayed behind to speak with passengers, calmly explaining that he had been tracking a series of complaints involving that crew member for months. "What happened to this baby was tragic," he said, "but it exposed something bigger." His voice carried the weight of someone who had seen this before and finally had enough proof to act. The mother, now at the airport medical center with her baby, was finally getting the care she had begged for. Doctors confirmed the burns were minor and treatable, but they praised her for staying calm in such a stressful moment. She later thanked the nurse passenger, who had quietly helped in the background and stayed in touch for follow-up support. As for the other passengers, many gave statements to officials before